Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Before we begin the meeting, I'll read this announcement from the city. During this declared state of emergency, this meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code Section 54953E, as authorized by resolution of the City Council. Please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the Human Relations Commission will participate in the meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period for an item by joining the Zoom webinar. Any emails received by 5 p.m. today were forwarded to the commission. And now I'll ask the assistant to the city manager to proceed with roll call.
Commissioner Ball,
Here.
Commissioner Wakidu,
Here.
Commissioner Rakestraw. She's here. Commissioner Solomon,
Here.
Commissioner Webb,
Here.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Here.
Chair Lynn.
Here, and as everyone will notice, we have a new commissioner here. So I'd like to welcome Commissioner Rakestraw to our group. I think you'll find it good work and a great group to work with. So welcome. Great. So we'll move on to minutes approval. The minutes for the May 5th, 2022 meeting have been delivered to the commission members and copies posted on the City Hall bulletin board. If there are no corrections or additions, a motion is in order to approve these minutes. Do I see any hands? I don't see anyone. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the minutes. Do we need a second? We need a second for that. Okay. I have a second from Commissioner Solomon. So assistant to the city manager will go ahead and do the vote for that.
Commissioner Ball,
Yep.
Commissioner Wakidu,
Yes.
Commissioner Rakestraw, and Jill, I need you to verbally say.
It's so loud here. I was trying to stay mute, but yes, I will log on for the point when I need to.
Thank you. Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Yes.
Chair Lynn.
Yes. Great. So the minutes are approved, and we'll move on to oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the commission from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment for any non-agenda items? And I don't see anyone in the attendees box. I do have a question for the staff. We received an email earlier today from a community member wanting to ask whether we might consider including in our work plan for next year sort of a portion of a community project that she was proposing. So I don't know if that's something that we might discuss here or if that's considered part of the agendized items for later on.
That would be considered as part of the item 5.3 that you'll be discussing.
Got it. Okay, so in that case, seeing no members of the public in attendance, I'll go ahead and move on to unfinished business. First we'll go to the Color of Law Subcommittee, which will present an oral update. No action will be taken on this item at this time. Vice Chair Sylvester, Commissioners Solomon and Webb, would one or more of you like to present an update?
I'm waiting to have the ceremonial voluntold.
Voluntold.
I'll miss when this part of this is over. Well, I'll keep it short out of spite. Maybe that wouldn't be out of spite. I don't know. Our event is still planned for July at the senior center. More details TBD. Sorry, there's a little bit of feedback on my end. Oh, it seems to be fading. So we'll be sending around details about that event on email once we're on break. So keep your eyes wide open for that. Just a quick update on the project itself. We kept our online surveys open for a little bit longer. We've got some great help from the city's comm team for that. I am so sorry, but I actually spaced and didn't get a count on how many additional surveys had come in, although we had a lot of robust discussion on various email lists and online. So I think we inspired a lot of people. we also fielded a few questions from the public about what the heck are you doing? So that's good. It's always good to be challenged and think about why you're doing something. So the survey is now completed and done. We're happy with that. We're moving on to our oral history part of the project. We had a little bit of a game delay due to the release form authorization. And actually, I was going to ask Christina if there's an update on that.
I have pinged our city attorney's office numerous times, so I will ping them again, and fingers crossed I can have it tomorrow. I have let them know that your intention is to start conducting interviews this month. So they're aware of the timeline. I suspect they've just been very busy.
Oh yeah, no doubt at all. And I did take a look at the timing math, and I'm pretty sure if we start next week, we're okay. If we start much later than next week, we could run into some problems, just in part because it's summer, and even though people want to take part in the interviews, people might be traveling or busy or whatever. So, but I think we're still in the A-OK window. Some of the secondary research that we've talked about that has been done by actually all members of the commission, also by members of Historical Association and by Stanford University, some of that secondary information, kind of a sneak preview of it got presented at a conference like on community history at Stanford University a couple of weeks ago. It's looking really, really, really good and super engaging to the audience. And that's before any of our survey results, our oral history, and frankly, before all the secondary research was put together and compiled. So I believe that link is public. I'm happy to share if anyone wants to see that. I could share it out through Christina. I'm really excited. That's all I got. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. I see no questions. We'll see you all on July 26th at the Senior Center. And I think that's looking good. I think that date's going to hold because the COVID surge is hopefully going to be completely over by then.
Thanks for that update. Great. So we'll move on to the Racial Reconciliation Subcommittee to present an oral update at this time. Would Commissioners Ball, Nwakidu, and/or Webb like to provide an update?
Yes. I think beyond the venue and date and top title we gave, we didn't have much following those, but I think the flyers have been done. But I think, Christina, you might help us here since you have been interacting with Adolpha. I think it will be because you have more updated information than the rest of us. I have a little bit, but it won't be complete. So, but I know you would have all the complete because you've been working directly with them. So could you help us out with this, please?
Sure. So as Nirvana mentioned, the flyers have been posted. I just received today the translated flyers in Russian, Spanish, and Chinese. So I will be forwarding that to the commission after tonight's meeting so that you can distribute those to your networks in addition to the English version of the flyer. We are reserved for June 22nd at the community center and the Redwood Room. We are, I think so far we have 10 people as of yesterday who had registered. So that's great news. So hopefully that number will continue to increase. And we'll be meeting with Adolpha Cole, who is our facilitator from Kennedy Speaking next week. The subcommittee just confirmed a meeting next Thursday to review the icebreaker questions and all of these small group questions that they have put forward for our consideration. And then we also have received from the people who are registering some questions from them. So we'll be going through those and incorporating those into the program. But yes, we are in the marketing stage, and we greatly appreciate your assistance in helping us to get the word out. And of course, we hope to see you all at the event.
Thank you, Christina.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? I saw Vice Chair Sylvester's hand first. Go ahead.
Quick question, if there will be a social media post to be able to be shared?
There will, and if any of you subscribe to the City Hall Connection, you'll have seen, I think in yesterday's edition, the event was flyer, and then that information was shared in there. But yes, there will be social media posts within the next few weeks.
Great, thanks for that update. And Commissioner Solomon.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to the event and just made a note to myself that I need to make sure that I register for it. I wanted to ask, am I correct that, as is usually the case, there will be interpreting services available in Spanish, Mandarin, and Russian?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great. And assuming that there are some kind of breakout groups, will breakout groups be by language group, or will interpreters be going with the breakout groups? I'm just wondering how that will work. And part of the reason I'm asking is, also for thinking about our Color of Law event coming up in July, and just kind of, trying to think about different possibilities for how to work effectively with different language groups when everybody's all together.
Yeah, that hasn't been decided yet. So that will definitely be a conversation point when we meet with Adolpha next week to get her input on how she thinks this might be best facilitated. And we will also coordinate with our MEP team and get their input about what would work best.
I can state that in the Candidly Speaking events that I have been to, where they have some amount of, I think it's automated translation because it's in a virtual setting, what they have tended to do is have a specific group for anyone needing translation assistance of some sort. Depending on how many people we end up with, that may end up being a good solution.
Okay, sorry, Commissioner Ball, did you, was that a suggestion, or, I mean, it sounded like a suggestion.
I was just attempting to give a little bit more information about what likely solutions are.
Got it, okay.
Commissioner Ball. Oh, if I may follow up, when you've attended the other Candidly Speaking events, those were online, correct?
That is correct, yes. So there may need to be adjustment there for in-person, but yes.
Absolutely. Okay.
Just sort of highlighting that the approach taken in that setting was to have a single group for anyone needing language assistance. And that included, English speakers, but who needed some sort of transcription or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. If there are no other questions, I think we can move on to the work plan discussion for fiscal year 2022 through 23. And this will be a discussion to finalize the work plan items for next fiscal year to be submitted for approval by this to the City Council. And action will be taken on this item tonight. So Assistant to the City Manager Gilmore will provide the presentation, and Assistant City Manager Ramberg will lead the discussion. So whenever you're ready.
Christina, I think we talked about me doing something brief in the beginning so that you guys can get straight to your discussion. So I will take the handoff now. Thank you, Chair Lynn. So this is the second of your 2-meeting process for establishing next fiscal year's work plan. You all did a great job last meeting in May, generating some thoughtful suggestions for potential work plan items. 6 new items were brought to the table, 2 items that are on this year's work plan but not yet completed are on the list for being carried forward. One of those is the homelessness storytelling, which has some things in common with the community member email that Chair Lynn mentioned at the start of the meeting that was received by the HRC by email midday today. And then the other is bystander training, which was a referral from the City Council Ad Hoc Subcommittee on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. So those are the 2 carry forward items, and then there were 6 potential new items. And what staff did in keeping with our past practice is to look at each of those projects and provide some descriptions based on our understanding of what the scope would be. And if we had questions that came up that weren't covered in the Commission's discussion from the prior meeting, we put those in a category of needs more information. If there was something that we felt we did not recommend to be considered going forward, we put that in a category of not recommended. And then everything else, we have in a category to recommend that you consider it as part of your prioritization, with the end product being a 3-project kind of the special to this upcoming fiscal year project, in addition to all the other ongoing items that are always on the Commission's work plan. And just to briefly go through the projects and which categories they are in from staff's assessment. There are 6 that we have in the category of recommended for consideration for prioritization, in addition to the 2 that I've already mentioned that are the carry forward items. There is one that would be, not that it's not completed, but that there might still be valuable work to continue, which is the racial reconciliation community engagement, which would be a follow-on to the Candidly Speaking event later this month. There was a suggestion on the topic of navigating grief to have some kind of CRT, Civility Roundtable or similar event. An idea around having a diversity week with a range of different events and activities during the course of a week that would feature the different facets of diversity in Mountain View. And that, as noted, is in the category of recommended by staff, but with a bit of a caveat to make sure that the scope of how many events and the range of events is within the capacity of the Commission and staff to undertake. Another project relates to the history of women and their contribution to Mountain View. And then those are the ones that are in that category of recommended for prioritization. The next category of items that staff felt needed additional information includes gender needs and assets, where I believe the proposer, who can certainly speak for herself, called it Needs and Assets Light with a focus on listening. So an event that would allow people to talk about needs and assets, maybe not as much of an assessment in the ways that we have typically done needs and assets assessments. And for the newer commissioners, you may or may not know that we have had 2 of those in the recent past. that have been quite sophisticated and comprehensive. One looking at needs and assets associated with the LGBTQ plus community in Mountain View, and the other associated with resources available for immigrants in Mountain View. And I think those, not to embarrass Commissioner Solomon too much, those really benefited from the fact that we are lucky to have somebody whose professional expertise is in doing that kind of work. And she brought that expertise to scoping it and also to conducting it, and then even provided some additional person power for some of the analysis when that was needed. So I bring that up because those have tended to be heavier lift projects and have needed the better part of 2 work plan years to conduct. So that's one that we just wanted to explore a bit more if the commission is interested in that, to really have some more discussion about what that scope might be, what it means to have a light needs and assets assessment. And I think that, you know, the same would go around the caregivers needs and assets assessment, of really trying to understand how that model of investigation would apply to that topic and whether we have the capacity to carry it out. And then that covers 2 of the 3 that are in this category. The other is mental health awareness advocacy. And there was a little bit of discussion at the last meeting around kind of what the commission's role is around advocacy, that not being a something that is typical of city advisory boards. So just trying to understand more what the scope of that might be. So any of these, the commission could choose to move into that first category. And it doesn't mean you get to pick more for your final work plan. It just means you have more things to pick from. And it would be your choice as a commission as to whether or not to move any of these to that other list. And then last but not least, certainly is the idea of looking at extending the voting rights to people in Mountain View who are not citizens for local elections. And a couple of examples were cited of the city council in San Jose directing staff to explore this, and also there being a voter initiative in San Francisco to have school board meetings be, school board elections be open to voting for people who are not citizens. And the history, this item has come up before in Mountain View, in addition to these other places. And it was something that the council chose not to pursue when it was raised from the HRC last time. So I don't believe we have council level policy support for an item that would have this significant a lift, even though I know that the project is let's explore what it would mean to do it, or who would benefit, or, you know, are there pros and cons around it? There's the work of the exploration, and then there would be the work of actually implementing going forward, if that was something that was decided. And we don't have council direction to do that. Furthermore, we've consulted with our city attorney, who is aware, which at least I wasn't, I don't know if you were, Christina, that there's actually been legal action challenging the San Francisco measure. And it is, I believe it's on stay now. It's been stayed. And it is our city attorney's advice that we not undertake something while kind of legal precedent is still outstanding. And the basis for the challenge is that state law requires that elections be by registered voters who are citizens, and that isn't something even charter cities have the authority to change. So that's an open legal question at this point. So it would not be staff's recommendation that the HRC include that item on its work plan for 22-23. So that is my presentation, and what might be helpful is to see if there are any questions about the process. And then I would suggest that you talk about each category in turn. So for the first category, is there anything you want to take off of it? For the second category, is there anything you want to move into the first category? And same thing for the third category. And that, Chair Lynn, I don't know that you need any assistance for that part of the discussion, but when it comes to the point of moving things around, I have a screen that I can share to do that. And then when it comes to the point of taking your votes, you guys might remember my trick. And I think Commissioner Solomon, you know that the n divided by 3 + 1 trick to do prioritization, that depending on the number of things you're voting on, that influences the number of votes that you get in a way that hopefully means that the voting will kind of naturally sort out into things that kind of rise to the top. So when we get to that point, I can help with the process if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think to your first suggestion about providing a visual aid, yeah, definitely think that would be helpful for the group.
Great. So now might be the time if there are questions about process before you get into the actual discussion of the items. If we had public comment, I mean, if we had public in attendance, this might also be the time to take public comment, since, you know, once you guys start your deliberation of moving things around, you would want to be informed by that comment, but I don't see anyone in the attendee list. So.
Yeah, I don't either. So we'll move to the deliberation of the commission and action in that case. So Audrey, at this point, do you want to share screen, or how should we?
I'm happy to do that. Would you mind if I just first confirmed that everybody has a good sense of the process? Or whether there are questions about the process or anything that I've presented so far. Okay. All right. Everybody's tracking. I made some sense. That's good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Apologies. I'm looking for what hold on a second. All right, can you all see the slide with the projects? Great.
Yes.
Okay, great. So these are the projects in their categories. And if you would like to start with the recommended for consideration, my question to the group would be, are there any of these you want to discuss, advocate for, ask questions about, or propose be moved to a different category? And if it's clear, if you feel like you remember what we discussed last time and you don't have questions about them, you know, that's okay too.
I see a few hands up. Oh, many hands up now. I saw Commissioner Solomon, your hand up first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I do have a question about two of the items on the recommended for consideration list. Might sound like I'm trying to cheat here or kind of circumvent our, you know, our guide rails for selecting, as I understand it, 2 to 3 projects. But I was wondering if the continuation of racial reconciliation community engagement could possibly be part of a diversity week. And this might have come up or been referenced briefly last time, and I was looking back at my own notes and trying to remember if this was discussed. But if I'm understanding correctly, Diversity Week would potentially have multiple events, although I realize we have to be bounded and, you know, work within our resources. But is that a possibility that a part 2 of the racial reconciliation event could be part of Diversity Week?
Would the proposer of either of those two items like to comment on that? And then Christina and I can comment on staff perspective.
So I suggested the continuation of racial reconciliation. And I was thinking, I mean, when we discussed it last week about combining them, I think I was against that just because I think all types of diversity are really important to acknowledge, but I sort of saw this as sort of being able to I guess like bring special attention to racial issues and diversity. But Commissioner Solomon, if I'm understanding your question, is it more like how or what would the feasibility be of combining these two items versus like whether we should?
Yes, it was more sort of thinking that from my perspective, diversity is not just about race or ethnicity. There are multiple dimensions of diversity. And from looking back at my notes from our meeting last month, certainly we would want, at least how we discussed it last month, we would want a diversity week to cover, to address multiple dimensions of diversity. But nevertheless, I was thinking that certainly one of those dimensions could be race or race and ethnicity. And so would it be feasible, especially given that, we are limited in what we can do next year? And, if we were to select diversity, we can say we're going to plan 3 or 4 events, for example. Could one of them be a continuation of the focus on racial reconciliation, and the other events could be focused on other dimensions of diversity? So yeah, I guess it was a question of like, is it feasible? Is it within the realm of possibility, but also is it something that the group might be interested to do and reconsider from our discussion last month?
Great. I think it was Vice Chair Sylvester who suggested Diversity Week. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see with the shared screen whether if there's a physical like hand up or anything. So if you're raising your hand, if you could use the raise hand function, that's easier for me to see.
And Chairlyn, I think it was actually Commissioner Webb who had suggested the Diversity Week, if I recall correctly.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, it was me.
Oh, okay.
All right. Commissioner Webb was the.
I have no raise hand. I apologize.
Okay. Sorry,
Okay.
apologies.
So I don't know, Vice Chair Sylvester, if you had anything to add to that.
Maybe a couple of things. First of all, I just want to acknowledge Chair Lynn's comments. I mean, I remember them last month about why she wanted to keep the 2 items separate. And I guess I remain torn. I respect her opinion, but without a whole lot of definition for what Diversity Week could be, it's hard to say how a particular type of event might fit into it. Some of the things we talked about for Diversity Week, it wasn't just a series of like in-person or online events. It was things like maybe social media posts about diversity, raising diversity awareness in the community. So with that said, I could see how trying to shoehorn a community engagement event into that around a specific topic might feel a little premature. And also just a reminder that the idea behind Diversity Week was, I don't want to say it wasn't near and dear to me, but it was something I thought we could start thinking about. I wasn't married to the idea for necessarily this coming work year, but just something to think about and see what we could do with it. Maybe in the coming year, maybe in another year, how we could start thinking about what something like that could look like.
Okay, thanks. And then I guess question for staff. Does it change, does Commissioner Solomon's question, does it change the feasibility of those two items if they were to be combined?
I think probably not. I think, a CRT, as we've seen in the planning of the one that is coming up in June, took several months to plan, and it's been rated in the staff report you see in the table as medium. If it's going to be part of a week of other events, for it to not be just additive of a medium plus a high, then the other parts of the diversity week would wind up being smaller, fewer and smaller, or it is really just additive. It isn't, yeah.
Okay.
So it
yeah.
feels to me like those are two separate items that you might want to do both, and you might want to time them at the same time, but it doesn't feel like it allows you to do both within picking just one project.
Right. Commissioner Solomon, does that sort of answer your query sufficiently with that discussion?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking, and thank you everyone for your comments, reminding me also about additional points from last month. I think to Vice Chair Sylvester's point, it is without having the ideas for Diversity Week further fleshed out, it is kind of hard to see how well or not so well, these might fit together. So, so I think I will stay tuned as we have further discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, then, all right, next on my screen is Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask a little bit for more details about Diversity Week in particular. Staff recommended doing this as the model of Team Week with a narrower scope of work. I was looking a little bit at Team Week. I did not, unfortunately, know about Team Week or have the time to invest in Team Week prior to what it happens, but it looked like there were 6 different events and all sorts of different things. So it seems quite involved. So I'm curious what, how close to that was envisioned in that model, and how much narrowing was sort of intended by that sort of statement about narrowing the focus.
I'll happily address that. As we discussed last month, it wasn't to model it directly or specifically off of Teen Week in terms of having a daily activity or having a certain number of activities. It was basically modeling it just off the concept of having a week dedicated to a topic.
And then for the staff part of that, what did we mean by that statement in the memo? I think it's less than 6. And, certain things like Commissioner or Vice Chair Sylvester was saying, social media, that there's the development of those materials, but then the execution is lighter than other things. So it really would depend on the kinds of activities that got selected and what kind of partner availability there was to carry them out, and how easy it is to coordinate with those partners, and so on.
Commissioner Ball,
I was just going to say thank you. So yes.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little more clarification on the navigating grief roundtable, because I know there was some discussion about it, and it was mainly focused on one part versus the caregiver section of it. And was that discussed by staff at all? Can we get a little clarification on that?
Commissioner Ball, as the proposer, would you like to speak to your intention?
Yeah, so I think to some extent, so I propose both the navigating grief and the caregivers, but I think they're addressed as 2 different items on here. So navigating grief, really focusing around both individual and community grief. How do we deal with loss? Because there has been a tremendously higher level of loss of all different forms, both human loss, losing people to COVID or other purposes during COVID, but also loss of opportunity, all sorts of different pieces. And we as a society are really trying to grapple with that. And I think it's something that's very hard. And different people are processing it in different ways and that sort of thing. Now, caregivers have been particularly impacted, and in some cases probably have some overlap in terms of being impacted with grief, but at least at the proposal level, I intended those as distinct separable proposals, one being focused on caregivers, trying to understand what we, from a city perspective, can do to help lighten the load there, and the other being focused more on how do we as human beings navigate loss and grief around that loss.
So are you opposed to, possibly, since we're saying we need more information for that, are you opposed to kind of putting those in together? Or having like a smaller component of the caregivers added to that if we move forward?
So I'd need to understand a little bit what the proposal was there. I think, honestly, given all of the different things on the plate, my sense is we should probably pick one. I do think I tend to bias towards focused events rather than things trying to touch every button. I think that can be a little bit, it doesn't necessarily help everyone, but it helps the people that it helps a lot more. So I would actually, my preference would be to separate them or keep them separate, and probably, given the scope of what we have capacity for, we move forward with one. Probably not both, but if you see a good way to combine them in a way that feels coherent and whole, I would definitely be open to hearing about it.
Okay. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. And Commissioner Solomon, I see your hand up.
Yes, I have another question, and it's about the carry forward of the bystander intervention training. And I would appreciate if someone could reiterate. So originally, if I'm remembering this correctly, there was a request from, it was either City Council or the REI subcommittee for information about bystander information training options, and that was provided. But then is the carry forward part of that is to actually put on a bystander intervention training in Mountain View? In other words, to have the HRC leading, coordinating that as a continuation of that request from the REI subcommittee. Is that correct?
So the REI subcommittee wasn't overly prescriptive. What they were responding to at that point in time when they made the referral was the noticeable increase in hate crime and anti-AAPI sentiment that was happening in Mountain View and in the Bay Area. That continues to be a concern. I know that our multicultural engagement program coordinator, Nancy Ducos, who's running our current Chinese language Civic Leadership Academy, is hearing that. In fact, tonight's session is with the police department, and that is a big topic that they want to talk about. We also have seen an increase in anti-Semitic sentiment and hate crime in the region, and we are going to the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan with an update, Christina and I, later this month, around some of the things that the city as a whole has been working on, including the things that the HRC has been working on. And they will have a continued interest in seeing us promote that kind of bystander and anti-bullying and allyship kind of curriculum and learning and skill building in the community. And so they weren't prescriptive about, does this mean we're creating a Mountain View specific, we completely make it up from beginning to end, or are we finding things like Candidly Speaking that exist as models that we can make happen in Mountain View and help promote. And there was, I think coincidentally, a series that was happening that the library had planned that the HRC was able to help share the word about. But there was always the intention, if I'm not mistaken, not speaking for the HRC members who are on that committee, to do something more. It's just time was not, wasn't possible. So I'll stop talking and see if others wish to speak to that. I'm seeing Vice Chair Sylvester's hand.
Just to add a little clarity from that subcommittee, one of the things we had noticed, we attended, Sherilyn and I attended some of the online training. A couple of things. One, it certainly wasn't tailored towards Mountain View, but we also thought online just didn't seem to have the right impact. And we really both thought, although we had not come to the conclusion that an in-person event with this kind of training would be much, much more powerful in community building than trying to do something online. But we didn't define for sure that we would do that, but we did find a couple of partners to potentially work with to do I don't want to say custom, but like a Candidly Speaking, where they come in and give us the methodology and help build things up. Just to give a little clarity, I know we haven't talked about that project in a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any more hands raised. So at this point then, staff, we might need a little bit of your help in terms of guiding this. Do we, like, how do we proceed? Do we go down the list and, so I'm seeing more, now I'm seeing more hands.
Ask a
Are
question.
folks, okay.
I believe Commissioner Rakestraw had her hand up.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner Rakestraw.
I am just uncomfortable with the wording of number 5. I would prefer that it said unhoused people or people without permanent housing.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up, so we got a letter from Malia Perez, who's a community member who's pretty involved in, I'm sorry, is someone speaking?
Leah with an L. Oh,
that's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said Maria. I didn't.
No, it's Malia Perez. So she's a community member who works pretty closely with some of the underserved, not just in Mountain View, but also in the area. And then she was asking if we wanted to also include the housing insecure, which I thought was a pretty good idea as well, and wanted, I guess maybe we should put it to both staff and the rest of the commission, whether they'd be interested in like sort of opening up this this item to maybe, like Commissioner Rakestraw said, like, the unhoused or housing insecure, maybe find like a more concise way of saying that, or a snappier way of saying that, I guess. But curious staff whether that impacts the feasibility of that item, and whether that changes staff's recommendation for the prioritization.
I'm happy to respond to that question. And I also saw some other hands, people who I think want to speak to this item. This came as a suggestion from in the current work plan to build on what we had done, what you, the commission had done around folks living in vehicles and that storytelling. And so I do want to make sure that the commissioners who are associated with that existing project have a chance to speak. From staff's perspective, I think the main consideration that you may have is, the things that affect scope are how easy is it to identify and connect with the people who are in the community or in the population that the storytelling is to be about. And housing insecure is a broader group. It doesn't necessarily mean more stories, but it might mean more variety in stories and could affect the, how easy it is to identify and reach people and decision making about how to scope that. I don't inherently have a staff answer. It wouldn't change the recommendation, in my opinion, but it'd be something that as a subcommittee began to work on it, they would have to kind of grapple with those scope questions. Does that answer your question, Chair Lynn?
Yes, it does. Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. Were there other folks who, Commissioner Rakestraw, I wonder if that addressed your concern or question?
I guess I've been spending a lot of time looking at the charter of this group, and one of the 5 powers and responsibilities is to serve as a forum for public discussion. And the 3rd item there is inclusivity. So issues concerning outreach to diverse segments of the population and soliciting input from the community. And I find this to really meet that need for outreach to diverse segments and finding a way to solicit input. I mean, storytelling is definitely soliciting input. To me, that's a very important part of the charter, from what, as a newbie, I am seeing here. So I just wanted to get a better idea of what the expectations were for that item. So thanks. Yeah, I understand it a lot more.
Okay. Vice Chair Sylvester, yeah. Oh, sorry, just so folks know, my panel is limited, so I can't really see if you're physically raising your hand necessarily. It just so happens that I happen to see Vice Chair Sylvester's this time, so if you can please use the raise hand function, that'll guarantee that I see you and can call on you.
With apologies, Chair Lynn. I'm a co-host of the meeting, so I actually don't have the button.
I think there is a button, but okay.
I don't have it, so I apologize for waving frantically.
Okay.
So in way of clarification, and just a couple of comments on this item. I think I was one of the originators of this item last year. And I think I was one of the people who advocated briefly for it last month. I would prefer not to use the word homelessness. I do probably prefer the word housing insecure. I think getting rid of the word homelessness is probably a good choice, but I think the definition of who is covered in such a storytelling session, we could discuss it later. But I did want to point out to anyone who didn't have a chance to read Malia Perez's letter. It's really, really impressive. And one of the things it implies is that she would be willing, her organization would be willing to help identify and help organize people to such an event. So that would be a huge win for us because she has so much credibility in the community and so many connections that would really, really help. And this is work she is deeply committed to do and would love our support with it. So read her letter. It's one of the best written letters that have ever come to our desk.
And I'll Yeah, I'll second that only because like, yeah, we did work with Reach Potential really closely, especially a few years ago when you and I, Vice Chair, were on the safe parking storytelling project. So I felt like that was a very meaningful project as well. And Malia and her organization, I think, did a really great job in helping us connect with that community. And I think they would be more than willing to do it as well again this time. So yeah, great. Thank you for that. Okay, Commissioner Solomon, I see a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to say briefly in terms of the terminology, I can't remember now. I feel like it's pandemic time, meaning you can't distinguish whether something happened 1 year ago or 3 years ago, but sometime in the last few years, I was actually looking into the vocabulary around this issue, and I did also see a preference in what I read within the community for talking about unhoused, or another term I had seen was unstably housed, which I think seems rather similar to housing insecure. But anyway, just wanted to put out there that I think those are preferred terms instead of homelessness. So I agree with my colleagues on that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I think that is open. It sounds like it's open for adjustments in terms of terminology, if that's correct, staff. So does anyone else have sort of questions, concerns, or anything they want to submit for this item or any of the other items in consideration? Is that a hand, like a physical? Okay, so Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
I was just curious if we would discuss additional information needed items next, or if you were expecting to discuss them right now.
If I may.
Yes, please.
You might wish to close out the discussion of this section by seeing if there's anybody who would wish to move any of these items off of this list and have them no longer be considered. If there aren't any of those types of suggestions, then we would move to the next categories.
I'll only point out the only item we have not discussed is women's contributions to Mountain View history. If anyone, Commissioner Webb, I think this was your suggestion from the last meeting. If you or anyone else would like to speak to this item, I'm happy to listen.
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, no, I don't see anything else. I mean, we had a lively conversation about it last time. And I think the only concern was the definition of a woman was part of the issue. But if no one has any questions on it right now, then we just move forward.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or indication that anyone else has any questions. So thank you for that. Let's, yeah, I think that's a good idea to move on to the ones that maybe need a bit more discussion in the additional information needed category. Does anyone want to start it off with, I know we sort of touched on a few of these already in our discussion. Okay, I see a physical hand. I'll just keep an eye out on your little square, Vice Chair Sylvester, since you don't have that function. Okay, so Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
It's okay. It's more fun to do the rah-rah thing to make sure someone catches me out of the corner of their eye. I'm happy to address staff's earlier posed questions about the gender needs and assets by starting by making my own amendment to delete the phrase needs and assets from the discussion. Totally agree that needs and assets assessments, at least how we've defined them historically, have been a lot. So even calling them needs and assets light probably caused some confusion. So I do like the idea of focusing on more of a form of community listening. We've looked at a lot of different demographic groups as in our work in the HRC, LGBTQ, we've looked at race, we've looked at immigration, we've looked at housing status, but we've never actually looked at gender. So my thinking around gender is that, you know, the pandemic has had a disparate impact on different genders. We live in a tech-heavy society in Silicon Valley here in Mountain View in particular, where gender issues are often downplayed, but often known to be an issue. Policy issues often affect people differently based on their gender. So I thought it was timely. I was partially inspired by the woman who came to speak to us about CEDAW, about, you know, elevating, in her case, she was talking about elevating women's rights in our policymaking, but my look is at a different lens, a more gender-based lens. And my idea to hear the community out, and we could define if that's at a CRT or if it's via a survey, a listening forum or something else. And I think listening forum is where I'm starting to triangulate, is to understand how our community looks at gender, how our community is impacted by gender, both their own and that of others, and just start to have a better understanding of the role of gender in our community. Meant to be a very positive forum, but also to give us information about how we think and feel about it. And that's it in a nutshell, and definitely no needs and assets. Although we might learn our needs in the process or learn about some assets in that process, but not a data-driven project.
Vice Chair Sylvester, I wonder if part of your comment is sort of a question to staff, whether that changes feasibility of this, and whether that might, are you also proposing to move this up to the first category of recommending for consideration?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't.
And Audrey actually asked a couple specific questions in her opening or earlier remarks, and I hope I addressed all of them here in my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sylvester. Yes, that was clarifying for me, and the two things trying to get at in putting things in this category is making sure that it would fit within the parameters of what we could undertake, and also just are we clear enough what it is? And so in my opinion, if the commission as a whole would like to move, or not as a whole, as a majority who would like to move that item up, staff does not have a concern with that.
Is it possible just to, I don't know how editable this slide is.
I can do that. I would like to make sure it's something that the commission as a whole or as a majority would like to do. We could do a straw vote on that, but I also see that Commissioner Ball has his hand raised and didn't know if
Oh, it's for the next one, so we can wait and do this first.
I'm happy to conduct this. Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
Same thing you were just about to do.
Okay, I'm happy to conduct a straw poll if folks. How do we do this?
I could lower my hands and raise hands.
If folks are good with moving with Vice Chair Sylvester's description of and sort of new explanation of how she wants to amend this item, if folks are comfortable with moving that up to the recommended category, either press the raise hand button or physically raise your hand and I'll try to see it. Okay, I see at least 4. Now I see, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, we definitely have a quorum. So Sorry, Commissioner Rakestraw, I don't know, you're a little out of view there, but I see a hand. Okay, so it sounds unanimous. Sounds like, yeah, that is how we're going to look at it now. Great, thank you, Audrey, for modifying that. Okay, if that's all for the discussion on that one, I believe, oh, I'll lower my hand. Commissioner Ball, I think you had a hand up for another item.
Yes, so I was going to discuss the caregiver needs and assets assessment, which was one of the items that I proposed. As staff highlighted, the previous needs and assets assessments that we have done have leaned very heavily on Commissioner Solomon's expertise. I noticed I was looking at the list and I see Commissioner Solomon, your second term is up at the end of this calendar year, so you will not be around for the full duration of this work plan, kind of regardless. So based on that, unless we have someone else on the commission who feels they have the expertise to help shepherd this, which I do not, I would propose that we actually drop it for the work plan recommendation. But if there's someone who feels they do have the expertise to shepherd it, then we can have that conversation a little bit more. I believe none of the rest of us are termed out, though many of us do have our terms expiring at the end of this year and may or may not come back. But yeah, and Julie, I see you have a response.
Yes, thank you. If I could comment a couple of things about this topic. I actually, in an odd coincidence, have started professionally working on projects related to caregivers, particularly for older adults and people with disabilities, not for caregivers of young children who do not have disabilities, but they're certainly a related set of issues. I think that from my perspective, there are right now some very strong issues related to state level policies. So which of course, you know, that would be beyond the purview of what the HRC could focus on. But I just wanted to mention that's kind of my perspective on this topic. I started this work in the past 6 months or so. So I would say that certainly if, you know, when I'm no longer on the HRC, I'm happy to provide support to the HRC as a community member, and there won't be an issue of, you know, we can only have 3 commissioners on a subcommittee, but you can always have as many community members as you'd like. So I look forward to continue to be a supporter of the HRC's work when I'm no longer on the HRC. So just wanted to comment those 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering in advance, Commissioner Solomon. Commissioner Ball, I don't know if Commissioner Solomon's very generous offer changes your mind about this item.
I mean, I think that is extremely generous, and we should probably not try to pre-obligate you, given you're not going to be on this. So while I appreciate it, I think both your statement that the sort of core of the issue right now from what you're seeing already doing work in this is at the state level rather than the city level, and that while you are generously offering your time, I would not want to sort of have you pre-commit to that. My recommendation to drop this would stand.
Are there, if anyone wants to object to Commissioner Ball's edit? I don't see anyone. So Audrey, if you want to go ahead and take that off, then thanks for. I mean, it's a very important topic, Commissioner Ball. But appreciate you helping us with this decision. tonight, because it will be hard to, I think, whittle it down to 2 or 3 for sure. So that was very helpful and generous of you. So mental health awareness advocacy, I'm sorry I can't, Commissioner Nwakidu, that was you,
Yes,
right?
that was me.
Great. Do you, is there any other additional information from staff's presentation that you'd like to discuss now?
Yeah, so I mean, I've clearly understood Audrey's explanation of how much engagement the HRC can be involved in any kind of advocacy. But even regardless of that, I just want to still give some just information or explanation as to why I think this is important. And I see that it ties to even some areas on the recommended topics already. And just to answer the questions for staff, it's the intent. Just like I brought up the idea of the racial reconciliation, it's me just sensing what's going on in the community, what I feel is needed. And again, we know that mental health is very prevalent right now, and many people are really suffering with mental illness. And so, I mean, that's the intent or the motive in me bringing this up, and trying to find ways in which there could be some kind of support so that people can find ways to live functional lives, especially after the pandemic. And so, yeah, the purpose is really to just find ways to support our community to live quality lives, and not to feel like, this is a stigma on them or shame that they're suffering from this condition, because I think one way or the other, we all do. And so, of course, the intended audience is still our community, so residents of Mountain View, because I would like to see our community continue to thrive. Whatever issues we deal with, whether it's race or mental health or unhoused situations, whatever it is, that we can all find ways to bring it to the table and find ways to provide support. In terms of the scope of it, I didn't think too broadly of it, but what I was just thinking of just more recently in a couple of days was, what if we partnered with experts or local organizations that already do this kind of work to provide some kind of map that would kind of, help people through the path of recovery, providing support and a safe place for people to be able to talk about what they're dealing with before it gets too far or they get to a place of despair or hopelessness. And just try to bring that support. And that's why I kind of felt that when Commissioner Ball talked about people going through grief or even caregivers, that it somehow ties into your mental well-being when you go through anything traumatic or or deal with something very stressful. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why I kind of brought up that idea of how do we support our community through mental health and to maintain a functioning society, getting past, COVID or whatever situations that, even pre-COVID, people have been dealing with, mental illness. But I think people don't talk about it because it's a stigma and people sometimes are ashamed of it. So how do we support our community? So that's just my general, speak on it. And but I see that there are other very highly important topics there. And since we can't choose so many, if this can be one of them, that's fine too. But I still want to, put my heart there that because I identify with the struggles of mental health, and illness. And I know so many people who are struggling to get back to normalcy. Even people who are refusing to go back to work or to their employers, it's part of what they're dealing with. So how do you really help people to be released from that? I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but I just see people seem stagnant and can't move forward. So that's just my feel. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Nwakidu. I'll sort of throw it to staff. Does that do you need anything else from Commissioner Nwakidu or any of us in terms of feasibility about whether you can change your recommendation for consideration for prioritization?
So thank you so much, Commissioner Nwokidu. I know that I can feel your feeling, and your what you're bringing is your sense of what's happening in the community and the community need, and I don't refute that in any way. What I still find a challenge is to figure out what would be a role within the expertise and capacity of the HRC to do something that would be helpful and meaningful. And so, I mean, we're not in a position to develop new services or to provide service, but there are agencies that do provide service. So one of the things, I think maybe we did talk about something like this in the last work plan prioritization session that was described as a resource fair, like a mental health resource fair. And I wonder, I mean, that's something like, I'm trying to picture what would we actually do, and how would it fit the experience and strengths and capacity of the HRC. That's what popped into my mind. So I guess I would ask if that, is that similar to what you're thinking, or a direction that you think would be suitable?
I didn't think it that way, but I think once you mentioned it, it made sense. And I'm just thinking about people who have even, other conditions where there's a hotline, or there's some, where they can call before it gets too far. If you know somebody who's going through, such a situation, just providing that, because people don't naturally reach out, or if they don't know, they're not aware that they could seek help to go. But if they know, if we make an awareness that, look, if you're dealing with this, here is a resource, or maybe even a family member can pull you to a resource, because some people just don't or can't. But so I think what you just said, I think made sense in terms of how can we still help? Because I kind of feel like, even in hearing that, this is not something that the HRC or even what the city, puts a priority on. But the thing, we deal with mental health on the day-to-day. It's here. But I think it's just like the whole racial situation thing. It's like, I think there's some issues where we want to be in denial, or we don't want to talk about it because it's an issue of shame or discomfort. But that's more of our reality. So
And
that's why,
I guess what I would say is that it's, at least speaking for myself, it's not at all coming from a place of denial, and it's just way too evident in my personal circles and just being a member of this community. But in terms of what is the role of a city, which is not a public health provider or a behavioral health provider, or the role of an HRC, to how do we add value to that, right? Not saying it's not a reality and not important, but how do we add value to that? So if you're comfortable calling it a resource fair, like say mental health awareness / resource fair, then perhaps your colleagues can indicate whether they would be wanting to have it moved to the recommended for consideration list.
Does anyone have any additions or inputs?
I see Vice Chair Sylvester's hand up. Oh, and then I also see Commissioner Rakestraw's hand up. Sorry, just so happened to see Vice Chair Sylvester's first. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I first want to thank both Commissioners Ball and Commissioners Wokidu for a really passionate and challenging discussion about grief and mental health. And hearing them both, I know that they're approaching the topics a little bit differently, but I'm hearing some significant overlap. And I wondered if either of them would like to explore if there's a place where they can meet in the middle. I'm hearing, I heard both of them talk about what COVID has done to our community and the need for people to talk about that, not necessarily from like get mental health support, but to talk with each other about it and look for ways to move forward in community. I may just be hearing this from my own lens, but I'm hearing a lot of similarities. If they were interested, I would love to hear them, see if they could find a common project. That's it.
So I think there is a lot of similarity. I'm a big advocate of focus. So, I mean, I think that you can probably have a much more effective event if you focus on a thing, whether it's, or a condition, whether it's grief, or I think there's a lot of anxiety around reintegration. I think there's a lot of depression in various things. My inclination would be for us to pick one of those and focus an event around it, or pick several, but have them be distinct events. I think if we try to do a sort of global mental health event, it's going to, one, be harder for people to self-identify into, oh, this is for me. And two, I think it's going to make it harder for us to really do something that's effective. So that would be my take. But I am open to argument.
I just want to say that I heard both of you talk about reentry in a post-COVID world, and you might both be talking about anxiety and depression, or just anxiety, or just other challenges. But I just want to reiterate, I'm hearing a lot of the same thing.
I also want to make sure, Commissioner Rakestraw, I think you had your hand up. If you had anything to add.
Reiterate what Commissioner Nakito says, which is that mental health is a huge issue in our city and society. I mean, I think about the suicides we've had. I think about the stigma, how much we need to destigmatize mental health around here. I think it's much bigger than just an event to provide assistance on what is available in the community. I mean, one of the roles of this group is tolerance, right? Issues concerning non-discrimination, diversity, and cultural awareness, and making people in the community aware of people with mental health challenges and the fact that they are functioning members of society is it's just as important, and it's just as discriminatory for some people as, other forms of discrimination. People are constantly, if you have depression or anxiety or ADD, you're, sent out of companies. These are big issues, and I do see the importance of focusing on them as a group in the same way we focus on race or other things. I mean, do we have the expertise? There's nothing in here that says that the people on this committee have to have the expertise to discuss any of these issues. The role of this committee is to go out and find the people with expertise and bring them in and help create the liaison between the city and the community. And so I don't find that to be a compelling argument. I really do think inclusivity, and inclusivity includes people with disabilities, people with mental health issues, all kinds of things. I find this to be an extremely important, compelling issue myself. So I just wanted to support my fellow commissioner.
Thanks, Commissioner Rakestraw. Commissioner Ball, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I think, thank you for that, Commissioner Rakestraw. I think it raises a really interesting question around the goal of the event. Because to your point, if we're trying to destigmatize mental illness in that context, I 100% agree with you, right? It doesn't matter if what you're struggling with is anxiety, depression, PTSD, something else. And so I think that that's an area that we're going, and that may actually be a distinction that we haven't been clear enough in sort of describing what we're trying to go here. I think if we're trying to help individuals who are struggling with a particular condition, that's where I think that targeting is more helpful or more useful. You don't treat PTSD the same way that you treat bipolar, the same way that you treat anxiety. And I think if we're trying to give people a forum for talking about something in particular, we should focus.
Thanks, Commissioner Ball. I also wanted to put an idea out there because in terms of like destigmatizing mental health, which I think Commissioners Nakidu and Rakestraw were both alluding to and directly addressing, is I wonder if this is where we could do a needs and assessment survey, because when I think about a community having like worked a little bit in the mental health field or area more like, I think it's a hard thing, I think, for folks to go to like one single event and like discuss it. It's not necessarily, it's a lot of times something that's hidden and a lot of times intentionally hidden. So I wonder if something more like a survey, and then bringing in resources and experts, like the commissioners have discussed, if that might make sense, and also sort of give us a sense of, in Mountain View, like what are the mental health issues that our community faces. If that's something that we want to consider as well, since that's one of the like modalities that our commission operates in.
Actually, I want to say something to what Charlene just said. I actually thought about the idea of a survey to kind of collect information to see, what the different issues might be and how to gauge and plan around providing some kind of support or resource, to those different situations. Mental health or mental illness it's the umbrella of different, struggles. So it's not just one thing, it's not just grief, or it's not just, dealing with stress or anxiety. Mental health is mental health. Whatever, when it disrupts your life, it disrupts you from functioning. So I don't think we could just even do an event to say, oh, only those suffering from, X can show up at this event, because mental health is not just one thing. It's multiple of things. But I think giving people permission, or letting them know it's okay, to not be okay, I think that begins to free people to feel like, oh, somebody knows about me, or somebody sees me, or somebody wants to help me. I think it's just, I'm just thinking more in terms of empathy and compassion rather than stigma and shame, like, to just move from stigma and shame to more of empathy and compassion. Yeah. So I think I did think about the survey, but I think when Audrey mentioned, the fair, it made sense too. Whatever it is you're dealing with, we might have a resource or some answers or a roadmap for you, and this is where you can go, and yeah. So I think both are good ideas. That's all.
Thanks. Commissioner Solomon.
Yes. In terms of the possibility of doing a kind of mental health needs and assets assessment, as much as I greatly enjoy doing needs and assets assessments, but I think that to do a mental health needs and assets assessment well would require a certain level of technical expertise and input regarding what kinds of questions to ask and how, that I think would have to be given a lot of consideration. I think there are a lot of issues around asking people questions about mental health issues, whether it's through surveys, interviews, etc. So I have some concerns about the idea of our taking on something like that. And I also, Chairlyn, if I understood correctly, I heard you referring to a sequence of collecting data and then providing resources, which is ideal. I mean, that's what we would want to do. But I think it seems that from a resource perspective, it would be in our scope, if we were to do a needs and assets assessment, to just do a needs and assets assessment. And then I believe that recommendations would go to City Council for, consideration. I mean, it would be a much longer process. So I think for those reasons, for myself, in thinking about if I were to be voting for a mental health topic, I think that addressing issues of moving, as was described from, I think by Commissioner Mulkey, from stigma to empathy and compassion, is something that could perhaps involve more of the community, and without our being bogged down in kind of the technicalities of how to do a community mental health survey or other community mental health needs and assets assessment. So my view.
Thanks, Commissioner Solomon. Audrey, I'll throw it back to you. I don't know with that discussion if you have enough to really to sort of, it seems like this might be moving in like a couple different paths. So not sure if you like, I guess I'll just ask you if you have what you need in terms of sort of moving this. Do we need to move it to a cat, or I guess what I'm asking is, number one, if you have what you need to move it to the recommended for consideration in prioritization category. And then number two, like to Commissioner Nwakidu or any other commissioners who would feel so inclined, would you want this moved to that category?
Thank you, Commissioner Lynn, and all the commissioners for your thoughtful conversation. I am hearing what I wrote down as kind of three possible formats or ways to explore this important issue. One being a needs and assets assessment survey and otherwise to really try to understand the landscape of mental health needs and resources and resource gaps and recommendations around that. Another being to have some kind of community connection and awareness that is seeking to move towards empathy and compassion around the struggles people are having, and that in some ways feels similar to the conversation you were having earlier around people with housing insecurity, in terms of them, perhaps, not feeling included, feeling more marginalized, feeling more stressed and at risk, and there not being a broader community conversation about that. So that felt like a second possible direction. And then the other was the way that I was filtering and interpreting what Commissioner Nwokodu was saying around is it bringing together resources when you were talking about partners so that people could learn about the range of ways that we as a community come together around mental health and what does exist and how to learn more about that. So I guess what I would say is that based on, I had some similar thoughts as Commissioner Solomon did about what it would really mean to do meaningful needs and asset assessment, and I think that's what I meant around expertise. The HRC doesn't need to be expert, but this is the kind of thing that the county has an entire staff of behavioral health specialists to do. And in fact, they have done it. They have recently done a survey of mental health needs across the county. And I would not feel like I could recommend that as staff, that be something that we would have the capacity to take on. So I think what I would suggest is that you as a commission talk about whether you would like either of the other two as the way to kind of tweak the description of this, either towards the kind of listening and connecting and storytelling and community empathy, or around a resource fair, and then you can decide whether to move it up, and staff would be able to support either of those in terms of your consideration for priorities.
Okay, that sounds good. Commissioner Wakidu, if it's okay with you, I was just going to put both those options up for a straw poll. Okay, I saw a nod, so I will go ahead and do it. So if you can raise your physical hand or press the raise hand function for moving the first item that Audrey described, which is sort of a listening, empathy, storytelling type event. If you would want to move that up to the recommended for consideration of prioritization, go ahead and do that. I see well, we definitely have a quorum. I'm looking to see if it's unanimous. It's unanimous, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then if everyone, including me, can lower your hands, and we'll do the exact same question for a mental health resources fair. If folks want to go ahead now and click the raise hand function or physically raise your hand for that. Okay, I see no hands for that. Okay, so we will, this will be the list. I don't want to skip the voter rights extension needs and assets assessment. If there are any questions or concerns about that item not being recommended from any of the commissioners, and sorry, I can't remember who recommended that last time. Yeah, Commissioner Solomon.
Yes, I will just say I was the one who recommended that and put that on the list. I am not going to make a proposal that it be moved up to the recommended for consideration list. So I just wanted to share that. And when we get to our last agenda item tonight, I'll share just an update from what's going on in San Jose, just for everyone's knowledge. But I'm do not contest where this item is on our table.
Thanks, Commissioner, and looking forward to your update. And thank you, staff, for providing for doing a lot of follow-up on that and providing a very robust rationale for why that was not recommended.
My thanks.
So, yeah, that was, thank you for following up with the city attorney and everyone else for that, and looking into sort of historical proposals as well. So we have our list, folks can see here. And then Audrey, remind me again how you, do you have a preference for how you want us to submit our votes? Is it basically like a tally, or?
What I would suggest is that we go commissioner by commissioner rather than project by project. And with the n divided by 3 plus 1, if we round up, you get 4 votes. And we'll see if that shakes out such that we have 3 things, no more than 3 things that will wind up at the top of the list.
Okay, Commissioner Solomon.
Yes,
go ahead.
I just wanted to make just a tiny suggestion for process. If you could number the items in the list, and then we can all refer to them and say, you know, I vote for numbers, blah, 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 blah. That might make it easier just for us to give our votes and for the votes to also be tallied. Great.
Thanks. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Commissioner Ball.
Yes, I would like a point of clarification. So we're voting for 4 inclusive of the 2 carry forwards. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I'm not trying to put my thumb on the scale. And it doesn't give you a gimme, but I think the Council REI subcommittee is very much expecting that the bystander training will be an item on your work plan next year.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. I think in this case, it's alphabetical, or we could go backwards alphabetical since the folks in the back of the alphabet never get to go first.
Chairman, Vice
Uh,
Chair Sylvester has her hand raised.
Oh, yes, Vice Chair Sylvester.
Chair Lynn, I was wondering if anyone else would like a couple-minute break to think about this list, or if everyone is ready to vote. I personally wouldn't mind a couple minutes just to review and read everything that it's the way it's now written.
Okay, do folks think it's 8:13 now? If we reconvene at 8, sorry, I will put a pin in that for a second. I see Commissioner Webb's hand up.
No, I agree with a few
Oh.
minutes to look over this.
Okay, are folks, do folks want till 8, like is 10 minutes, 11 minutes? Like if we come back at 8:25, are folks good with that? Okay, so let's all reconvene in 11 minutes at 8:25. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, thanks for that break, everyone, and hope folks got some good thinking in during those 11 minutes. So why don't we, well, I said we could go backwards this time, like backwards alphabetical, because we never get to go in that direction. So if that's okay with everyone, we'll go and start with Commissioner Webb if you're ready to place your votes.
Can't believe I'm first. Yay.
Yeah.
No pressure. I decided 1, 3, 5, and 6.
Great. I think, yeah, 1, 3, 5, 6. Okay, great. Then we'll move to Commissioner Solomon for your votes.
I decided to go with 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Sylvester.
I'm merely going to crib off my colleague, Commissioner Solomon, 5 through 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Who do we appreciate? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Rakestraw?
I mean, if I had gone ahead of the other two of you, you would have had to curve off me, which is 5, 6, 7, 8.
Great. Seeing a pattern here. But let's see. Commissioner Nwakidu?
5, 6. I had a tie between 1 and 7, but I think I'll do the 5, 6, 7, 8.
All right, and I'll put my votes in for 1, 5, 6, and 8. Great, and then Commissioner Ball?
I also will vote for 1, 5, and 6, and then it actually doesn't matter what else I vote for based on this unless I tie 7 and 8. I guess I'll go with 8.
Okay, sorry, can I change to 1? Yeah, because I had a tie there. I think I'll go with 1 instead of 7. Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Did I get that right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So based on this, there are a clear 3 that rise to the top that have a majority support. And those are 5, 6, and 8.
Okay, so then our next steps, I guess there really isn't any discussion or anything past this, right? Like the next step is to make a motion, is that, or if anyone has any objections or wants to change votes, like the motion is happening, so.
I'd like to ask Assistant to the City Manager, Gilmore, would you recommend that we do a motion on 5, 6, and 8 with a second and a voice vote?
We certainly can. Yes, that would be great.
How would we do this motion? Would we need to like read aloud the names of the projects, or
Use
how
the
would
numbers.
It's the
we can use
numbers.
the numbers? Okay,
Yeah.
that's simple enough.
So whoever makes the motion can just make a motion to put forward, items 5, what do we say? 5, 6, and 8 for the work plan for fiscal year 2022-23 for city council consideration.
Okay. Would anyone like to make the motion? Commissioner Nwakidu, I see you're unmuted, so
I'm trying to
going
remember. I'm trying to say it in my head so I can say it out, but I wasn't. I don't
Go
know how
ahead.
to. I'm trying to say it in my head so I can say it out. Okay, so I have to mention all 3, right?
You
Yeah.
can just number them. You can just say
Okay.
5, 6, and 8.
So I can say. So I just say okay. So I'm. So the what is I moved to, right?
Right.
And what's the next word?
I move to place items 5, 6, and 8 on the proposed work plan.
Okay, so I move to propose items 5, 6, and 8 on the work plan for the upcoming year. Yay!
Perfect. Do we have a second? I see a second from Vice Chair Sylvester. Is that right? Okay.
I second that motion, yes.
All right, great. Okay, then I believe the motion passes.
Well, no, we need to do a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, I always do this wrong. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a vote. I won't try to
Commissioner
cheat the
Ball,
system.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Wakido,
Yes.
Commissioner Rakestraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Yes.
Chair Lynn.
Yes, great. Okay, so now the motion passes. Great. Thank you all for making that a pretty seamless process. I think we had a great discussion about some of these items, and it looks like it's going to be a really, really interesting work year if it gets approved by City Council. So we'll see what comes back in our work plan from that. Great. The next item is new business, of which we have none. So we'll just move on to commission and staff comments, questions, and commission reports. I think I'll maybe go first if that's okay, since assistant to the assistant to the city manager, Christina Gilmore. This is officially her last, I think it's officially your last meeting with us, and just wanted to extend a great big thanks for all your support for us, and you've been a big part of all of our experiences here on the HRC, and we'll definitely miss you. I don't know if any of the other commissioners have anything they want to add to that. I think Vice Chair Sylvester had a card that a lot of us and past commissioners also signed, so hopefully that'll get to you soon, if not already. And Commissioner Webb, go ahead.
Being new to the commission, and I'm sure that Nirvana will say the same thing, is I just really want to say thank you for making this transition to the commission smooth, not intimidating. You welcomed us with open arms, and you didn't make us feel foolish. And that I thank you for.
You're welcome.
I second everything he said. I appreciate you.
Commissioner Solomon?
I third everything that Commissioner Webb said, and as somebody who's been on the commission for a pretty long time, but still sometimes just I worry about, like not knowing how to word things, saying the wrong thing, just feeling foolish, as Commissioner Webb said, still have that worry sometimes. So my thanks as well for helping to make this ongoing multi-year transition just a wonderful one. And thank you for all of your support for our meetings and our meetings as a commission, and also for our subcommittee work, which has been a lot of meetings for you to participate in, not just the once a month full commission meetings. So thank you so much. And just I look forward to continuing to see you at city events and continuing to be in touch and be working toward common goals, all of us together. Thank you.
Commissioner Ball?
Yeah, not wanting to make this run too much longer, but I think, you think of the HRC's role as providing kind of a human touch, connecting the city to the world, or to the city, to the citizens. If all of the employees of the city were as good at bringing that human self forward as Christina is, I don't know that we'd need an HRC. So I think it's been really wonderful, the extent to which you've been able to just connect with everyone and really bring a real person, and not just a nameless city staffer. Like Christina, we could be buddies, we could be hanging out having a beer, we're also just talking with things. So I really appreciate how much you've been willing to bring that of yourself to us.
And Vice Chair Sylvester?
Again, not wanting to drag this on and embarrass Christina too much more, but at many times it's felt like you've been our 8th member or one of us in so many ways, and that's been lovely. So thank you. I'm glad you're staying with the city so we can still find you and talk to you and see you. And I want to just say best of luck to you and whoever in the city is getting you. They're very lucky, and the city remains lucky to keep you. So thank you. Don't miss us too much.
I get to keep her.
Yes.
You're lucky.
Audrey stuck with me for a while. Thank you very much for all of those kind words. I really do appreciate it. And I did receive the card. And after confirming that it was legit, I did click on the link and I read all the notes. And they were delightful. And I really appreciate the thought and effort that was put into it. And it has been a real pleasure working with all of you over the last 5.5 years. But I am leaving you in capable hands. Laurel is amazing. She brings a lot of experience and energy and new ideas from her prior role. So I look forward to helping Laurel as she onboards as your staff liaison. And of course, I am not going anywhere technically. So anytime you guys want to reach out to me, you know how to find me. And I look forward to seeing you all later this summer at our events and then in the future for future events. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Audrey, yes.
I did just want to add to my words of appreciation for Christina and also more formally introduce you all to Laurel James, who's been on the panel with us here, soaking in all of the HRC goodness. And she will be working with Christina and supporting the 2 events that are coming up, and getting ready to be your liaison starting in September, with Christina kind of as a shadow or 2 training wheels initially, but she, knowing Laurel and all the ways in which just in the 4 or 5 weeks that she's been with us, she doesn't need training wheels for long. Laurel, would you mind saying a few words about your background? And
yeah, not at all. Can you hear me? I'm using my laptop speaker for the first time. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Audrey, for the introduction. And I also want to say thank you to Christina for an amazing handover. She's been doing a great job preparing me for supporting this body, and I'm very excited to come on board. So I joined the city of Mountain View at the beginning of May after almost 7 years with the city of Hayward in progressively responsible positions, including working on the city's racial equity action plan, being involved in the Government Alliance for Race and Equity team at GARE, the GARE team at Hayward, and also supporting our community task force after the adoption of their commitment for an inclusive, equitable, and compassionate city. So I bring a whole bunch of that background to these conversations, and a real excitement for having conversations about diversity and the human element of government in our communities. So I'm excited to be supporting you all in this really exciting, hopefully, work plan for next year. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Laurel. Welcome. Very much looking forward to working with you. Yes, Audrey.
on a different topic, I just wanted to make you all aware, if you're not already, that the council will be considering the city's annual budget with the introduction of the recommended budget on the 14th, and then the adoption of the budget on the 28th.
Thanks. And then they'll consider our work plan in September, is that right? Or
correct. We don't have this specific date yet, but it'll be one of the 2 meetings in September.
Got it. Okay. Did again want to welcome Commissioner Rakestraw. I know you've had a some action already in this this meeting, but yeah, hope looking forward to working with you as well. Are there any reports from the commissioners? Commissioner Solomon.
Yes, I did want to just give a brief update on the topic of potential voting rights for non-citizens in San Jose. So I had talked about that a bit last month when I raised the potential needs and assets assessment of voting rights for non-citizens in Mountain View as a possible topic for our work plan. So the San Jose City Council study session on non-citizen voting rights looks like it's going to be set for September by the Rules and Open Government Committee. So what that means is that this topic cannot be a possible topic on the November ballot because there is a deadline of August 12th for ballot measures to qualify. So supporters of non-citizen voting were hoping that the study session was going to be happening now so that there could potentially be a ballot item. Given the schedule changes, there were apparently some schedule conflicts, and June is for budgeting, and due to a variety of circumstances, the next opportunity for this to be on the ballot in San Jose will be 2024. So I did also note, just in passing, that Oakland is actually considering, this just was announced like from what I saw in the past week or so, that Oakland is actually considering extending voting rights for school district elections to, school board elections to non-citizens. And it looks like Boston is perhaps considering changes as well. And Audrey, I appreciated your mentioning earlier in talking about this topic that there's actually been a legal challenge to San Francisco's law based on state law, and I hadn't seen anything about that online. But if you happen to have a link to that, to any information about that, if you might put that in the chat or just send it out, because I'm just interested to read more about this topic. So thank you. So that was my update. And I also wanted to ask if Jill, if you might say a little bit about yourself, so we know a little bit more about you. You were just thrown into the fire today. And it's been wonderful to work with you in this meeting, but just would love to hear a little bit about your background if you're willing to share.
Hi, I foster puppies. So I have two crazy ones right now. I have been a longtime volunteer in Mountain View, mostly in the school district for years. And then when Trump was elected, I helped form an organization called Listos with a bunch of Mistral parents to support emergency planning for our Latinx community. We did a lot of great work, and then DACA supported DACA recipients as well. Thankfully, the threat did not become as horrible as we thought, and we disbanded. And then during the pandemic, I transitioned to, I actually did all the buying of food for the day worker center for like a year. I would go to the restaurant supply store with $1,000 and buy all their meat and beans and rice and bring it back because for some reason I thought I was invincible. And knock on wood, I never got COVID. And then I spent a lot of time working with Malia and Sandra Esparza and Cafecitos. And I've been really just involved in supporting, some of our more vulnerable communities in whatever ways I can. And when this opportunity came up to kind of step up more globally, I also am a huge special ed legal support person. So I work with a lot of parents of special, I have 2 special ed students. And so I spend a lot of time with parents of special ed students, helping them understand the law and their rights and working them as an advocate. And so that's another one of my big passions, along with puppies.
That's great. I know there's more than one dog person on this commission. So yeah, a couple of us have dogs and cats. So that's great. Jill, I may have seen you actually in like the are you the one driving like a truck like with around Crisanto with, yeah, I think I've seen you, but like lots of masks and gloves and I'm like, now I recognize you. So yeah.
I'm all around.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to actually meeting all of you at some point. So
great.
Jill, I already know you.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, Jill and I know each other. We live in the same neighborhood. Our daughters are good friends, and we have a common friend, your childhood friend,
yeah.
Francesca. So we've known each other for a while.
Great. Great. Well, welcome.
Thank
So glad to
you.
have you. Commissioner Webb, I see your hand up.
I just want to say welcome. We're happy to have you. I think you're going to add lots of value because you're a puppy owner. I don't have any pets, but I appreciate someone that will take any stray in and take care of it.
They just broke out of their cage again.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. Do you mind if I sign off because they need some help? But it was nice to meet all of you. I'll see you at the next meeting. Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Great. Oh, Commissioner Webb, did you have another report or just wanted to make sure? No. Oh, okay. Are there any other commission reports to make and staff reports? None. Okay. In that case, I'll just say everyone have a great summer. I believe our next meeting is scheduled for September 1st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. And whether or not it'll be in person is, my understanding is that is TBD, but is a possibility. So fingers crossed. Yeah, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good summer. See you at the events.
See you at events.
Hi,
Good
everyone.
night, everybody. See you guys
Take
soon.
care,
See you
everybody.
next time. Welcome, Laurel.